Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about my week number 2 running back start or sit decisions for fantasy football in 2021. Inside today's video, I'm going to be going over every single matchup of the week from Thursday Night Football all the way until Monday Night Football, and I'm going to be telling you guys whether I believe you should start or sit each notable running back in every matchup. But before we get on into the video, I would like to ask, if you are new to my channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, you end up having a great time, to please make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below. Not only is it free, I put out content every single day to help you guys win your 2021 Fantasy Football Championship. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, make sure you hit that like button down below to help boost this video up the algorithm so that more beautiful people like yourself can see today's video. I would also like to ask that if you have a Twitter and you would like to follow me, I tweet all about fantasy football. Make sure you follow me on there at NotoriousFNTSY, at NotoriousFNTSY. And the link to my Twitter is also down below in the description. So without further ado, let's get into the video. We begin with the Thursday Night Football matchup between the Giants and the Washington Football Team. We go from an electric Monday night matchup between the Raiders and the Baltimore Ravens. That may have been a snooze fest early on, but in the fourth quarter, things started to get a little bit spicy, and then the game goes to overtime. We go from that matchup that was really, really good to this game, the Giants at the Washington Football Team. While I'm not saying that this matchup is going to be 100% boring, looking at it on paper, this seems like a certified snooze fest on Thursday night. So in this game, I'm going to be starting up Antonio Gibson. Now, all offseason, there was a whole lot of narratives about Antonio Gibson potentially getting a Christian McCaffrey level workload from Kyle Allen, the backup quarterback of the Washington Football Team. There was a lot of hype around Antonio Gibson from Kyle Allen as well as from fantasy analysts, and a lot of people were beating the drum heavily for Antonio Gibson. Now, I was not one of those people. I personally believed that J.D. McKissic's involvement in this offense last year was real. On third down, this guy was getting into the game, and I really didn't believe that Riverboat Ron Rivera was just going to pivot off of J.D. McKissic and give Antonio Gibson this huge workload like he gave to Christian McCaffrey in Carolina. Now, I was completely and utterly fucking wrong. J.D. McKissic was basically irrelevant in this offense, and Antonio Gibson was in the game the whole game. Just last year, J.D. McKissic had 100-plus targets. I would be shocked if he got anywhere near that number in 2021. At least based upon the first game, J.D. McKissic is not going to be involved at all, and Antonio Gibson really does have a workload that could lead to him being a top 5 running back in fantasy football. This week, up against the Giants, this isn't the greatest matchup, but we saw Melvin Gordon run all over the Giants last week. So Antonio Gibson is definitely a running back that I'm looking to start this week. For the sits, I'm sitting down Saquon Barkley. Now, going into last week, I told you guys that, you know what, maybe you want to start Saquon Barkley, but don't be 100% confident that he is going to have a great game. They're going to give him that load management, but in a lot of situations, it's hard to pivot off of Saquon Barkley. That was the running back that you drafted in the first round in most scenarios. He doesn't fall into the second round, so you drafted him potentially inside the top 5. So I was like, you know what, even on a limited workload, let's just throw him out there. In most situations, I said you could start Saquon Barkley. That was clearly wrong. Saquon Barkley did not see all that many touches. He was not valuable at all for fantasy football up against a tougher Denver defense. Now this week, will he be given more work? I think so. I think they're going to try to kind of push him in slightly, not just go full on, slip it in there, fucking full on in there. They're doing just the tip approach with Saquon Barkley. So they're going to go in more and more. Right now, just the tip was in last week against Denver. Now they're going to go halfway in. Okay, and maybe in week number 3, they go all the way in with Saquon Barkley. But with knowing the fact that they're likely to not go all the way with Saquon Barkley, not give him that full workload, with the fact that he's playing up against a tough Washington Football Team defense, I'm definitely going to be sitting Saquon Barkley this week as well as Devontae Booker, because unless Saquon Barkley is completely out, Booker really has no relevance in this offense, and J.D. McKissic, like I said, was just nowhere to be found last Sunday up against the LA Chargers. Next game here, we begin with the Sunday slate of the New England Patriots at the New York Football Jets. Now, Damian Harris did end up fumbling in that game up against the Dolphins, and a lot of people are talking about how, hey, Damian Harris is now going to be in the doghouse, how he's not going to get that much usage. I doubt it. I think Damian Harris is the clear guy. We saw him run very, very well up against the Miami Dolphins last week, and I expect him to see a very solid workload this week as well. He didn't see really any receiving opportunity in that game, which is something that I projected to potentially go his way a little bit more this year when compared to last season with Cam Newton, now with Mac Jones under center. But that's okay, because even if Damian Harris isn't getting that very high workload in the receiving game, he's going to make up for it from jamming the ball down the throat of the New York Football Jets defense. This is a cupcake matchup for Damian Harris to have a very, very big week. For James White, he was reinvigorated into this offense. Last year, James White was a complete and utter swing and a miss at the running back position. People drafted him thinking, hey, remember when Tom Brady was there, how involved James White was? Well, I don't think Bill Belichick's going to change anything. Cam Newton liked to dump the ball off to Christian McCaffrey in Carolina, so James White should be perfectly fine. Wrong. That was completely wrong. James White sucked complete and utter ass last year, but this season, he's starting off looking good with Mac Jones, so I believe he will have a strong showing here up against the Jets in PPR or half PPR. In standard, while I would still start him, you would have to be really down bad at running back to want to be starting James White in a standard league. For sits, I'm sitting down all the New York Football Jets. Tevin Coleman, Ty Johnson, Michael Carter. Tevin Coleman looked like the best back out there up against the Panthers last week, but that wasn't saying much. This is a terrible situation to be in for any of these running backs. I'm not looking to start any of them unless one of them becomes the clear number one, and right now it's looking like it could be Coleman, but this week they're going up against the Patriots, and that is a tough matchup regardless of the fact that there's going to be so many running backs touching the ball. Next up, we got the Denver Broncos at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, I know Melvin Gordon to me is not a guaranteed guy that I want to be starting. I wouldn't tell you that this guy is a must start this week, but the more and more I've thought about it, the more and more I'm a little bit more confident in Melvin Gordon here up against the Jaguars, because he was given a decent workload last week up against the New York Giants. Now, would it surprise me if he completely shit the bed in this game and Javonte Williams played better, and then the week after that, Melvin Gordon's better? That's probably how it's going to go all season with such a tight split share between the two, basically splitting it half the time. Now, not exactly, but you kind of get what I'm saying. One isn't going to overwhelmingly dominate the other when it comes to touches. So I think Melvin Gordon is in a great matchup this week against the Jaguars, but unless you're in a deeper kind of league, he would definitely be a sit for me. James Robinson was a huge disappointment up against the Houston Texans. Will the Jaguars be able to bounce back in this game up against the Broncos? Will they actually commit to giving the ball to James Robinson? Now, I'm not completely out on James Robinson yet. I'm not running away, because a lot of people drafted James Robinson in the 3rd or the 4th round. I talked about this a lot after Travis Etienne ended up getting hurt, that I believe that Carlos Hyde was going to have enough of a role to kind of cut James Robinson out for being a top 12 running back, but I still saw the upside that he presents in this offense. Now, this may not be the most ideal matchup, but I'm not yet running away from James Robinson. I will have a state of emergency. I will come on here and tell you that, hey, I'm scared of James Robinson when it ends up happening, when I believe that you should not be playing James Robinson. But this week, even up against a tough Denver Broncos defense, hopefully Trevor Lawrence actually dumps the ball off more to James Robinson. Hopefully Urban Meyer realizes, hey, we really fucked up against the Houston Texans. We need to give the ball more to James Robinson. Now, is Urban Meyer smart enough to realize that? I'm not too sure. But I know from watching on the couch that, hey, you need to use James Robinson more, because he is the only reason why that offense was moving the ball at all last year. So please, Urban Meyer, if you're watching this, hand the fucking football off to James Robinson. I'm sitting down Javonte Williams because, again, I really do believe that Melvin Gordon is the better running back in this backfield. Will that be true at the end of the season? I'm not sure. But with such a close snap count between the two, I would lean with Melvin Gordon. But again, Melvin Gordon is certainly far from a must-start running back. I'm going to be sitting down Carlos Hyde. I don't understand what Urban Meyer is doing. He's going to give the ball to Carlos Hyde, but he is not productive at all. So I believe James Robinson is definitely the better start out of the two. Next up, we got the Buffalo Bills at the Miami Dolphins. The lone running back that I'm willing to start in this game is that bitch Carol Gaskin, Myles Gaskin, running back of the Miami Dolphins. Now, the Buffalo Bills defense locked down Najee Harris last week. You also have to put into perspective that was Najee Harris's first game, so maybe some jitters were involved. And the Pittsburgh Steelers offense was basically completely and utterly limp dick in that matchup. They ended up winning the game, obviously, but it did not look like a convincing win, right? So the Dolphins are going to go out here up against the Buffalo Bills. The reason why the Dolphins were so successful up against the New England Patriots is because of their defense, as well as when they're running the ball later on in the game, they were able to do it effectively. I believe Myles Gaskin is a key piece, a key part of this victory up against the Buffalo Bills if my Miami Dolphins were going to to win the game. Myles Gaskin is also the best receiving option out of this backfield, out of him, Malcolm Brown, as well as Salvon Ahmed. So I don't think Myles Gaskin is necessarily some top 12 running back on the week, but he is a guy that you can rely on as your running back too here up against the Buffalo Bills. I'm going to be sitting down all of the Buffalo Bills running backs, Devin Singletary, as well as Zach Moss. Now, Zach Moss did not end up playing in week 1. But it didn't really matter because Devin Singletary didn't go out there and just devour the Steelers defense. He played all right. He wasn't useless in fantasy football. But here up against the Dolphins defense, even though I personally believe that the Dolphins defense is really, really bad against the run, if Zach Moss is healthy, it is just going to be one of those backfields where you're confused every single fucking week because you're like, hey, you know what? Devin Singletary might be better at running the ball. Moss might be better at catching the ball, or maybe it's vice versa. I'm not even sure at this point who is better at what, because they're both just not very good at all. I think Zach Moss is the more talented running back, but with the fact that Josh Allen's going to be vulturing them at points in games, I just don't feel comfortable starting either of these guys until one of them shows me clearly that they are much better than the other, and that the head coach, Sean McDermott, realizes that they need to just use one running back over jamming both of them in and out of the game. Malcolm Brown as well as Salvon Ahmed will be sits in this matchup, as they are the clear backups between Myles Gaskin. Next up, we got the San Francisco 49ers at the Philadelphia Eagles. But before we break down this game from the running back position, I would like to ask, if you are new to my YouTube channel and you do end up enjoying, to please make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below. It helps me out a ton. I would really appreciate it. Make sure you hit that like button as well to help boost this video up the algorithm so that more beautiful people like yourself can see today's video. So back into it. For the 49ers, Raheem Mostert gets hurt. They're talking about how maybe there's going to be 1-2 weeks, nothing serious, and then it becomes 8 weeks, and then Raheem Mostert a couple hours ago announces on Instagram or Twitter, one or the other, that, hey, I'm done for the season. I'm having this reconstructive surgery. It's over. So now Elijah Mitchell becomes this waiver priority that has been just graced with you. If you're the number 1 overall priority, you're going to pick up Elijah Mitchell. You're going to. He looked excellent up against the Detroit Lions in relief of Raheem Mostert after he ended up getting hurt. In that game, Trey Sermon did not play. Trey Sermon was a healthy scratch. So what does that mean for week number 2? Is Trey Sermon going to play? Maybe. Is JaMycal Hasty going to play? Definitely. And JaMycal Hasty also is not a bad running back. So while I'm going to pick up Elijah Mitchell, while I'm going to play Elijah Mitchell in this matchup, something in the back of my head tells me that, Nick, Elijah Mitchell may suck complete and utter ass up against the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, I don't believe that's going to happen, but I'm just worried that Elijah Mitchell doesn't start off strong, and how the 49ers do things, how Kyle Shanahan does things. If Mitchell starts struggling, guess what's going to happen? 4 seconds later, Trey Sermon will get the touches, or JaMycal Hasty if Trey Sermon wants to play. So again, this is a smash matchup. I'm going to play Elijah Mitchell. I'm pretty confident that he could be a top 12 running back, that he could be a top 5 running back on the week up against the Philadelphia Eagles. I understand the Atlanta Falcons struggled against them, but this is not the Atlanta Falcons offense. This is the 49ers. So again, I am slightly worried, but I will tell you, if you have Elijah Mitchell, that he's basically must start right now. Even if I'm not even sure if I said I was a little bit worried at the beginning, I am a little bit worried, but all of the inklings in my body are telling me to start Elijah Mitchell this week, and that he is going to absolutely take the Eagles out back and do some dirty things to them. Miles Sanders is going to be a start as well. Maybe, just maybe, it's finally Miles Sanders season after years of people clamoring for Miles Sanders about how this guy's a true workhorse back. Guess what? He was not necessarily a true workhorse back. Kenneth Gainwell saw a lot of work out of the backfield here for the Philadelphia Eagles, but Miles Sanders did look very good in that game, so I will continue to fire him up here up against the 49ers, but eventually, I feel like it may end up falling apart for Miles Sanders because this isn't really a clear workhorse scenario for Miles Sanders, and this is a tough 49ers defense. I'm going to be sitting down Trey Sermon as well as JaMycal Hasty. If you're in a deeper league, though, make sure you pick up JaMycal Hasty. Because like I said, with how the 49ers run the ship there, maybe, just maybe, Elijah Mitchell struggles, and then JaMycal Hasty becomes the guy. Kerryon Johnson also just got signed there, who was formerly on the Eagles in the summer. So maybe a revenge game for Kerryon Johnson? Probably not, though, because he's on the practice squad, and Kenny Gainwell is going to be a sit unless Miles Sanders was to get hurt, or unless maybe this is a true split share there in Philadelphia, but that's not necessarily what we have seen thus far. Next up, we got the LA Rams at the Indianapolis Colts. We're going to be firing up Darrell Henderson, who looked fantastic. Chef's kiss up against a tough Chi-Town Bears defense on Sunday night. So I think Darrell Henderson here is in for a smash matchup up against the Indianapolis Colts in Indianapolis. I like Jonathan Taylor as well as Nyheim Hines. Now, the Colts offense did not look that great, in my opinion, up against Seattle. It is very clear in this backfield that there's a pecking order. Jonathan Taylor is the main rusher, but Nyheim Hines is going to be seeing slight work in the rushing game, but he is going to be seeing some receptions, which gives him value in PPR and half PPR leagues enough to want to start him. In a standard league, kind of just like with James White, who we talked about earlier on in the video, you may not want to be starting him unless you're in a half PPR or a full PPR league. Jonathan Taylor, like I said, he's the big dog, he's the lead back on this team, but understand that there are going to be weeks where maybe he doesn't get a couple of receptions. Maybe Nyheim Hines starts heating it up there with catching a bunch of passes, and maybe Jonathan Taylor struggles. But overall, I would say it's a pretty idiotic move to sit Jonathan Taylor, so I will be firing him up this week up against the LA Rams, and I will be sitting Sony Michel. A lot of people are like, oh man, they brought in Sony Michel, Nick. I don't know about Darrell Henderson. Come on. Come on, man. This is Darrell Henderson season, baby. There is no need for anyone to worry about Sony Michel. No need to start Sony Michel. It is all Darrell Henderson here for the LA Rams. Next up, we got the Las Vegas. So turn down your volume real quick. Raiders going up against the Steelers. I don't know if people like that. I don't know if they hate it, but it is what it is. So I gave you a bit of a warning there so that your ears wouldn't be destroyed by my voice. So Raiders at Steelers here. I'm starting up Najee Harris. Najee Harris sucked ass last week. Najee Harris looked like, well, he didn't even look like shit necessarily. Kind of did. Tough matchup up against the Bills. Here, he gets the Raiders, who just got a train ran on him by Latavius Murray, by Lamar Jackson, and by Tyson Williams. So here, I'm confident in a Najee Harris bounce back. If anyone in your league is stupid enough to want to go ahead and get rid of Najee Harris, you trade for him instantly. No one's going to be worried if you are in a more sharper league, if you're in a league with people who don't panic after week one, but a lot of people do. A lot of people, they see a bad game out of Harris, they see a bad game out of Zeke, and they start fucking panicking. And that's okay. If you're newer to fantasy, that is understandable. Because it is nerve-wracking to see your number one pick, like the guy you took in the first round, suck ass in week one. But guess what? It's comeback season for Najee Harris. He's going to have a much better game that he had in his NFL debut in week number one here up against the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm sitting down Jacobs and Kenyon Drake. But Nick, Josh Jacobs, he did really good last week. He did, yeah. On the stat sheet. Did you watch the game? If you watched the game, Josh Jacobs sucked ass. Did not look good. He scored 2 tugs. Congratulations. Robert Kraft will be happy for you. 2 tugs. That's a new record. But Josh Jacobs, in reality, he didn't look very good. He looked banged up, in my opinion. I don't trust him here up against the Steelers. Now, I know, obviously, in a lot of scenarios, you're going to have to start him. But if you have other choices, I'm probably going to be sitting down Mr. Josh Jacobs this week because, like, Drake was clearly very involved in the receiving game. Jacobs wasn't, which was easily predicted. I rubbed the crystal ball in the offseason. I told you guys, hey, Drake is going to be involved this way. Drake is getting touches as well. Jacobs was fine. He scored those touchdowns, but he was severely inefficient aside from those 2 tugs. So next up, we got the Bengals at the Chi-Town Bears. Here I'm starting Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon, baby. I finally hop off the Mixon bandwagon. I finally tell you guys hey, you could draft Joe Mixon, but I'm not 100% confident in Joe Mixon. And then once I left the Joe Mixon fan club, Joe Mixon became not Jerry Rice, that's a fucking receiver, became Bo Jackson. He became Barry Sanders. He was like fucking prime Adrian Peterson out there, slicing up the Vikings defense like his name was O.J. Simpson. It was amazing to watch. It was beautiful, truly. And I believe that Joe Mixon here up against the Bears, it's not a great matchup. It's not a great matchup, but you're still going to start him. David Montgomery looked excellent up against the LA Rams, which was a tough matchup, just like it was with Darrell Henderson going up against the Bears. Very shocked that both of them performed so well. David Montgomery looks like he's just going on with how he left off at the end of last year, where he was dominating for fantasy football. This matchup is chef's kiss up against the Cincinnati Bengals. You're definitely going to be firing up David Montgomery this week. The one thing that sucks, though, is Damian Williams was seeing a lot of the receiving opportunity in this backfield, which sucks because David Montgomery would get a huge bump up if he got more receptions. He's still fine without the receptions, though. It definitely just hurts his upside. I'm sitting down Samaje Perine of the Bengals and Damian Williams of the Chicago Bears because they're not super relevant. Williams, though, definitely more relevant than Samaje Perine. Next up, we got the Texans at the Browns. I'm starting up both of the Cleveland Browns running backs, 9-inch Nicholas Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Nick Chubb went berserk, like that Eminem song, up against the Kansas City Chiefs last week. They ended up losing the game, but Nick Chubb looked very, very effective. Nick Chubb is the lead dog in a very run-heavy system in Cleveland. This should be a smash matchup up against the Texans. Kareem Hunt obviously not going to be seeing as many touches, but still very valuable here up against the Texans. For the Texans, Mark Ingram shit-kicked the Jaguars. He went ham. I don't expect that to happen up against the Browns. While it's fine to pick him up, put him on your bench, you know, maybe you need to start him in the future because he looked like the lead back in Houston. Don't just throw him in this week expecting the output of last week because the Cleveland Browns defense is far superior to the Jaguars against the run. Phillip Lindsay as well as David Johnson are sits as well. Mark Ingram appears to be the one running back you want to roster. Phillip Lindsay also seems somewhat relevant. David Johnson does not seem very relevant at all. Next game up here, we got the New Orleans Saints at the Carolina Panthers. For the starts, I'm going to be starting Alvin Kamara and Christian McCaffrey. Why? Because they're good. Because they're really good. Christian McCaffrey, he didn't even have like a 95% snap count on the team. He was in the 80s, I believe, which is abnormal for McCaffrey. Still dominates. Doesn't matter who McCaffrey's playing. He will beat the fuck out of any defense. He's just that good. So you start him. Alvin Kamara, same exact thing. You fire him up here up against the Panthers. I didn't even put another Panthers running back because I don't even think they're relevant enough. Chuba Hubbard, any of these sorry motherfuckers that are behind Christian McCaffrey because they're just not really going to be in the game. Tony Jones Jr. looked pretty good for the Saints, but unless Kamara was to go down, there's really no upside in starting him. Next up, we got the Vikings at the Arizona Cardinals. Here, we're going to be starting up Mr. Dalvin Cook of the Minnesota Vikings. Looked all right up against the Cincinnati Bengals last week. The Cardinals defense suffocated Derrick Henry and that whole offense. Derrick Henry basically was, not Derrick Henry, I was going to say Ryan Tannehill just got devoured. Ate up. Ate for breakfast, lunch, dinner. He had second dinner. Chandler Jones sacked that motherfucker 5 times. This looks like it's going to be a tougher matchup, but I do expect the Cardinals defense not to be that good every game. That seemed very, very bad offensive line play by Taylor Lewan and the Tennessee Titans offensive line. So I expect the things to get a little bit more level this week. I think Dalvin Cook is fine. Now, some people might tell you to start James Conner in this matchup, but what I will tell you is that James Conner, he did get some usage. Technically, if you look at the carry numbers, I believe he out-carried Chase Edmonds. Off the top of my head, again, this is an exact number, 16-14, I believe, or 16-12 in favor of James Conner in rushes. But James Conner didn't see a single reception, and half of those touches that he saw were in the fourth quarter when the game was over. The game was over. They fucking were waving the white flag. It was all over for the Titans, and then James Conner is pounding up that defense. So I don't expect, unless the Cardinals lay a smackdown onto the Vikings, that James Conner is super relevant in fantasy. It seems like Edmonds really may just be that guy, pal, in Arizona. So we're going to be firing up Chase Edmonds, even though, hands up, I said that I didn't believe Edmonds would be the guy in Arizona. It appears he is. So, you know, I'm fine being wrong. We'll just talk about it every single week. It's okay. Being wrong, there's nothing wrong with being wrong, as long as you can admit that you're wrong. So Chase Edmonds appears to be the back here. Don't cut James Conner, though. But I would definitely start Chase Edmonds over James Conner this week. Next up, we got the Atlanta Falcons at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So we're sitting every single running back. Ezekiel Elliott he stood no chance against the Bucs. Mike Davis, not as good as Zeke. He stands no chance against the Bucs. Wayne Gallman, the backup, stands no chance. Cordero Patterson, also probably going to get some touches, stands no chance. You sit him as well. Leonard Fournette, Ronald Jones, Giovanni Bernard. Leonard Fournette plays really good against the Cowboys. Comes out, Bruce Arians says Ronald Jones is the guy. How, Sway? Have you ever seen that Kanye clip where it's like, how, Sway? That's what I'm saying here. How? How is Ronald Jones the starter? How? He looked so bad. I think he's better than Leonard Fournette, but he looked terrible. This is an easy matchup against the Falcons. I have no fucking idea what to think. I have no idea. Gun to my head, I'm telling you to start Leonard Fournette, but I have no idea. For some reason, the fact that Lenny dominated, the fact that they're saying that Ronald Jones is going to be the starter, for some reason, I think Giovanni Bernard is going to just dominate this week. Doesn't make any sense. There's no rhyme to the reason, but it's just Bruce Arians. It's just who the guy is. I'm sitting all of them. If you have to start one of them, start Fournette. Otherwise, I just want to see what happens so that I can have a little bit more confidence in this backfield. Next up, we got the Les Titans at the Seattle Seahawks. Pretty simple on this one as well, especially early on in the season. You want to start your fucking studs. Said it last week. Going to say it this week. Derrick Henry. But Nick, he got destroyed by the Cardinals. I know. You're starting him this week up against Seattle. Jonathan Taylor looked pretty solid up against Seattle last week. Chris Carson for the Seahawks. While this may not be an ultra run-heavy offense like I projected in Seattle, up against the Titans, you can really do anything, so I expect Chris Carson to have a very solid game. Even last week, when they were passing the ball a lot, Lockett went ham. He went really in. He scored 2 touchdowns. Metcalf looked good. Chris Carson still looked good, so I think even in a matchup like this, Chris Carson will still have very solid value in fantasy football. Next up, we got the Dallas Cowboys at the LA Chargers. Another scenario of a running back who you expect to do really good against, not really you expect to do good against the Bucs, right? Because I still said to start him, but I wasn't telling you, holy shit, you need to start Zeke. This is an amazing matchup. It was far from it. Against the Chargers is an amazing matchup either, but much better than up against the Bucs. I expect Ezekiel Elliott to be very involved. A lot of people talked about how Tony Pollard was in the backfield. Yeah, he's going to be, but Zeke saw a majority of the touches, a majority of the snaps, 80% of the snaps, so I think Ezekiel Elliott will be just fine here up against the Chargers for a bounce back game for Austin Eckler. There's a lot of smoke last week. Hey, he's not going to start. He comes in, he plays, scores a fucking touchdown up against the Washington football team. This Cowboys defense is ass. This is a great matchup for Austin Eckler, sitting down Tony Pollard, because again, unless Zeke goes down, he's basically irrelevant. Larry Roundtree does look like he might be the clear number 2 running back in LA for the Chargers, which does mean that, hey, if Eckler was to go down, then I like Roundtree. But with Eckler appearing to be healthy in this game, obviously there's no concerns for injury with this matchup. I'm definitely going to be sitting down Larry Roundtree because I believe Austin Eckler is the clear lead dog there in LA for the Chargers. So next up, we got the Chiefs at the Baltimore Ravens. I am starting to get very, very nervous about Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I'm starting to have that epiphany about everything I thought about last year about Clyde Edwards-Helaire, thinking about how I should have avoided him, and I don't have him on a single team, but I feel like, holy fuck, that things might start crumbling down for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I'm hoping that Darrell Williams isn't involved and Clyde Edwards-Helaire is the lead back. Now, you're not going to sit Clyde Edwards-Helaire because you drafted him in the second round. You put all his draft capital into him. This is not a bad matchup up against the Ravens. We saw Jacobs not look great. We saw Drake look pretty good, but we did see Jacobs score a bunch of touchdowns. So I expect, him to be able to do it in this game. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, it's a fine matchup. I'm just a little bit worried about him as a player, but I'm still starting him. I'm starting Tyson Williams as well as Latavius Murray. Now, some people, they were like, oh man, Latavius Murray comes in at the end of the game. Does that mean now you can't start Tyson Williams? In my opinion, no. No, I think you can actually start both of them. I think this is a scenario where you can start both running backs. Who would I prefer? I mean, Tyson Williams didn't look the greatest down the stretch of the game, but he also had a good game, and so did Latavius Murray. So I think really the situation here is you would just start both of them if you had either of them, and you just hope that they become the lead back. I think Williams will still get the most touches this week against the Chiefs, but I could be wrong. Latavius Murray is in a solid position there. Le'Veon Bell, Devontae Freeman seem to be useless in this offense, but it is a revenge game for Le'Veon Bell, but I'm not even sure he will necessarily even suit up. I'm going to be sitting down Darrell Williams as the backup to the Kansas City Chiefs running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Final game here, the Detroit Lions at the Green Bay Packers for Monday Night Football. In this matchup, I'm starting DeAndre Swift. Now, last week I was nervous about Swift. Jamal Williams did look good. So maybe my kind of perspective on this, that Jamal Williams will be used a lot, is correct. But Swift, in a game where I expect them to be down, will be getting a lot of receptions later in the game. Now, if he doesn't get those receptions, then you're probably going to be punching yourself on Swift. But you just can't sit him after that performance, so I'm firing him up this week up against the Packers, who looked bad on defense against New Orleans, but I expect that to change in this game. Aaron Jones, he looked bad. That whole offense looked bad. Rodgers, Adams, Jones, just Tunyon, terrible. But you have to anticipate a bounce back up against a terrible Lions defense. All systems go for Aaron Jones in week number 2. I'm sitting down Jamal Williams, even though he played good last week. Maybe it's a system where we can play both running backs every week, but I'm not yet enough confident to say that up against the Packers and A.J. Dillon. He looked pretty all right against the Saints last week, but Still not starting him. I think AJ, or Mr. Aaron Jones, is the clear starting running back there in Green Bay. So fire up Aaron Jones despite the lack of doing anything good last week. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying, please make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below. Again, not only is it free, I put out this content every single day to help you guys win your 2021 Fantasy Football Championship. And while you're down there, make sure you hit that like button as well. I would appreciate it a ton. I love you guys. Make sure that you stay safe. Thank you guys for all the support you've been showing me. If you have any questions, make sure to leave them down below in the comments. I love you guys all. Make sure that you stay safe. As always, good boy.